Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Mr. Keith Myers. We're here to talk Seahawks football. Now that we've moved on from the draft and we've got a 90-man roster, essentially a 90-man roster to work with as we head into the summer months, we're going to take a minute to kind of look at the roster, look at the way it's constructed, find some strengths and I suppose some weaknesses, and talk about where we have some holes. What are the expectations? If you think maybe we're better, we're worse off, or we're about the same, and just get some ideas on some specific players and maybe the impact that they might have on the roster. Keith, a lot to talk about. Welcome in.
Lots to talk about. Going to be a full show, so let's just jump right in. Where do you want to start?
Well, I thought we would start on the defensive side of the ball this time. Sometimes we kind of do the offense first. And this time I thought we'd start on the defense kind of where we left off last year. You know, we had lots of changes last year, moved off from a Hall of Fame head coach and a defensive system that got tired over time, couldn't figure it out, couldn't stop teams. They brought in Mike McDonald and the Baltimore Ravens defense that they ran there. Struggled a bit at first, and you kind of knew it would. He was also coming in with existing personnel. You had to integrate all of that. It took some time. We were one of the worst run defenses in the league the first 8 weeks, accumulating with that drubbing by the Bills in week 8, where they lost 31-10 and just couldn't stop them. 445 total yards, 2 touchdown drives of 90 plus yards, just ran all over them. And then the bye happened and the trade deadline happened and the team kind of turned it around. They signed Ernest Jones to be the middle linebacker. They jettisoned their 2 linebackers. Tyrese Knight came in to start with him. Early injuries to Byron Murphy and Boye Mafe, and I think even Williams missed a week. Those guys got healthy. Kobe Bryant came in and started over Jenkins, and the defense just kind of clicked, and the communication was much better, and they really solidified themselves into a top 5 defense at the end. So they went from about the 28th overall defense in week 8 to a top 5, or top 10 defense overall by the end of the season. But if you take a look at weeks 9 through 17, this team was a top 5 defense in a bunch of different categories.
They were a top 3 defense in most categories. So
yeah, 5th in scoring at 18.4, 3rd in actual scoring defense, 17.5 points a game, 5th in defensive EPA, 4th in total defense with 304 yards allowed per game. And now they expect to build on that. I mean, they just don't want to rest on the fact that they were top 5, at the end of last year. They want to kind of get to the number 1 spot. And I guess my question to you is, what did you think about the evolution of what happened last year? And what are they trying to do to build on that this year?
Well, I like the evolution. I mean, everyone's got to like the evolution of what happened last year. It can take time to implement a system. They knew that they were short at middle linebacker and tried to use some Band-Aids to hold it together for a year while they, revamped the rest of the roster. It didn't work, so they had to go make some changes. Made that trade for, Jones, and the end result was that things fell into place. And with the look at the system, or not the system, well, the system's there and it's not going to change, but the roster, the starters are back, all of them, every single one of them. All the impact players on defense that led to them being that top 5 defense, they're all they're all still on the roster. They're all here.
including
And
re-signing Jones, re-signing Jaron Reed in free agency.
yeah, and then they add, right? So it's all the key players are still there, and then they started adding talent. They started adding depth. Um, if you look at any of the guys, I can't even think of anyone other than Dre Jones, who has a significant drop, a significant loss, and I wouldn't consider him significant in any way. But they signed DeMarcus Lawrence to take his spot. Um, they're going
A
to
much
get
better player defending the run at the very least,
yeah, and
if he stays
so
healthy.
if he stays healthy. So overall, you look at the roster defensively, and you're like, there is a lot of potential here for this team to be great defensively. There's a couple little places where I think that the lack of depth could bite them really hard, but overall, it's the same guys that were the top 5 defense.
Yeah, and they added Emanwari in the draft, and he's
Yeah,
going to have a significant impact on the defense as far as playing times and taking reps and so forth. So, and then they added Jonathan Hankins. Now, some people might scoff at that, and I might be one of them, just because of
I'm
the fact
definitely
that
one of them.
he's aging, not going to be any better than last year's aging version of Jonathan Hankins, and I just think that that's a placeholder almost. I'm sure that he signed for a little above the league minimum. Don't know the contract details, but similar contract to what he signed for last year. I'm sure, maybe even slightly less, and really doesn't do anything for me. I don't think. I mean, he's good for about 10 to 12 snaps a game.
Yeah.
And if you're using him, if his snap count is above that, you're getting a degraded player, and he's not holding up, and something's going to be wrong with your defense if that's happening.
Well, and he's very much a a 2-down player anyway. He's worthless on passing downs. And so yeah, he's there to help you clog up the middle against the run, but that's all he does. And he doesn't bring any upside. It's been 3 full seasons since he had since he was good last. And so honestly, I'm looking at the roster at that spot, that nose tackle spot, and I see Quentin Bohanna there, who's 26, but
Yeah.
and I'm like, he may actually have more athleticism than Hankins at this point, because Hankins just, he's 33, and you can see he's been injured a few times. The athleticism's gone, and he's just not the player he once was.
No, absolutely. Byron Murphy's going to slide in there a little bit. Jaron Reed's going to slide in there a little bit. Leonard Williams might take a few snaps at the nose occasionally, especially during, when he's stunting. Brandon Peely is a guy that's practice squad level that, really hasn't impacted the roster, at least last year. They brought a couple of undrafted rookie free agents in that they'll carry on the 90 for now and let them compete and see if anybody emerges. And I think they'll be scrubbing some waiver wires and looking for camp casualties at this spot, I think, but we'll see.
Yeah.
At defensive end,
this is one of those positions that I said, I'm like, there's a couple of spots where the depth is low. And defensive tackle, defensive line really is one of them.
Yeah, I think defensive end is kind of questionable. And if Riley Mills was healthy, I would think that room would be adequate. Jaron Reed, Leonard Williams, Mike Morris, don't even know now. He probably has an opportunity here to make the roster. But when Riley Mills comes back mid-season, that could be a guy that might lose his job. And then Jared Ivory is the guy that they brought in undrafted, and we'll see what happens there. That's a spot I think they could be looking at again to add to. They had 11 picks in the draft, but only 2 on the defensive side of the ball.
So
it
Mike
really
Morris
didn't help
is interesting. He didn't do much. He's got 3 years in the league and has not done much. Last year was his chance to kind of step in and really prove that he belonged, because they needed a body, and he never really did. And so it's easy to write him off and just be like, okay, so he's just not going to be a guy. He is only 24. He is only 24. He's only a year older than Riley Mills. Um, let's not write him off completely yet. He's a young player, still trying to find his footing in the league. So there's a
Agreed.
chance. There's a chance. Like, what I am I betting on it? If I am I banking on that he has to in order for this team to win? No, I wouldn't. Wouldn't do that kind of thing. But there's definitely an opportunity for him to surprise us and really step up and play well. So
I
guy's
think we're
only
good on the
24.
starters. We're good at the starting level of
Yeah.
this defensive line, but after that, the depth gets sketchy. And I'd like
Mhm.
to see that solidified. And it probably will be solidified out of training camp, where that's not such a big concern, but it is today, May 8th.
They did
Edge,
sign an undrafted free agent that has the perfect name for a big run stuffing defensive tackle. His name is Bubba Thomas.
Bubba
And
Thomas.
if that doesn't sound like a big run stuffing defensive tackle, I don't know. Like, that's like,
Yeah, right.
is he good? Probably not. But
I don't
damn,
know.
that's the right name, right?
When they do his jersey, he should have permission to just put his first name on there.
To just say Bubba.
Bubba.
Yeah,
That's
he should be Bubba.
that's my name, Bubba.
That'd be
Um,
awesome.
Edge rusher, outside linebacker. So Boye Mafe, Derek Hall are back. Uchenna Nwasu, who we've missed essentially for 3 seasons with varying injuries, is back and hopefully healthy at the beginning of the year. I think that
Mhm.
really makes things interesting as far as being able to stop the run and have an impact there. And then Demarcus Lawrence is the other player that's going to play a lot in that rotation, given his health. Hopefully,
Mhm.
and watching metering his snaps and workload will keep him kind of going throughout the season. What do you think
Yeah.
about that room overall?
Um, so I like that room. I think you're 4 deep for 2 positions, which means you can get a heavy rotation going of getting um, fresh legs in there to uh, rush the passer off the edge. And the fact that one of those guys is such an accomplished player as Demarcus Lawrence, and he's going to be your guy coming in that's going to get 20-25 snaps of just pure rushing the passer. Uh, I mean, that's you could do far worse than that, right? I like this group. I do think that there is room for them maybe to uh, keep a young player, someone that really flashes at are in camp and in training camp, and so they're not stuck just being like, okay, well, these are the 4 guys and everyone else, sorry, too bad. They have a chance to keep a guy. Jamie Sharif last year kind of popped during preseason, and now he's going to be in that mix, but also in the mix at middle linebacker. Like, he's going to have
I found
some.
that interesting.
Yeah, they're gonna have him across there. That makes it really easy for him to make the roster if he has, um, versatility at both the off the ball linebacker and the pass rushing edge linebacker. Like, that's gonna be great for him.
I do find
Um,
that interesting since he is about 253. At least that's what he was listed at last year, and and he's going to have to pare that down, I think, a little bit on the inside to, where
mhm.
everyone else is at it, in the 240 range, 243, something like that. He's got that athleticism, so maybe he could bump that up a little bit. I think it's interesting because he doesn't have any college or NFL experience off the ball. And now I don't know, what he did in high school, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure he probably played all over the place, but um, that's interesting to watch. And that announcement that he was going to move around a little bit came at the same day that they cut Woodard, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Nevada, Las Vegas. who was kind of touted as being maybe a guy that could potentially make the roster, given the weakness of that spot on the 53. And they cut him right after minicamp,
Yeah.
which I found a little odd.
Well, they saw something at minicamp, and they're like, "Yep, this isn't it," and they made the choice to move on. So,
Which
did
is
you know that
really interesting.
Tyreek Smith is back on the roster?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
You know,
so
he was redshirted the year prior. So I
Mhm.
think he redshirted out of training camp last year and then um, signed a deal to be back on this
Yeah.
year. And so we'll see.
So we had a lot of hope for him at one point, um,
Wasn't he a
and
guy out of Ohio State?
he is, yes.
Defensive end. Yeah.
Yep.
Edge.
He's a guy that we had a lot of hope for at one point, and then he lost a year because of injury and never really made it back. And then last year was on and off the practice squad, but they brought him back again. And given that we once had really high hopes for him, and there was reasons, like this is a guy with a lot of athleticism, so it'll be cool if he can um, get it figured out and do some things, because there's talent there really is. But he's had 3 years with Seattle, and so we'll see.
So you mentioned Jamie Sheriff taking some snaps at off the ball middle linebacker. How else do you feel about that room where Ernest Jones looks great, Tyrese Knight looks really good, and then after that, it's got
It's
some guys.
nothing.
I mean, Drake Thomas had a few snaps last year, pretty decent special teams guy, a little undersized. Josh Ross, who we picked up midstream last year. And then Patrick O'Connell, who's just been kind of battling practice squad, 53 roster back and forth for a year and a half or so. So depth wise, I'm uncomfortable there. Starter
I'm very
wise, I'm
uncomfortable there.
perfectly good.
Yeah, the starters are great. The top two are fantastic, but the
It
depth
seems like
behind
we had
them,
this same conversation last year this time.
yeah, we did. Because they had the two
Two different
starters
players.
and completely different players, but they had the two starters, and then they had, they drafted a fourth round rookie that,
Looked overdrafted at the time.
yes, looked limited, and turned out to be a significantly better player than his college film suggested he would be. It's just different schemes, so they're asking him to do different things, and suddenly he shined. But
And Mike McDonald's his coach now.
yeah, that doesn't hurt. And then they went and made the trade for Ernest Jones, so they've got two guys that for the last 9 games proved that they were the real deal
Yeah, big time.
at inside linebacker, but there's nothing behind them. If one of them gets nicked up, do you just stay in the nickel 100% of the time?
Well, that's a great conversation to have, isn't it? So last year, I don't think we could have had that conversation in any legitimate way. And this year, we drafted a kid that maybe gives us that opportunity to do just that. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if Emanwari, between alignment in the nickel, in the big nickel, and the having Emanwari kind of move around a little bit on the defense and drop back into coverage and so forth, and kind of play that off the ball weak side linebacker. He could take way more snaps than Tyrese Knight does this year from the safety position.
Possible. I don't know.
I mean, it depends on how much base defense they play. I mean, teams are going to dictate that. Now, the nice thing about being the Seahawks defense and the approach with them is really kind of obvious in that it's they're deep, they're multiple, it's flexible. You saw the vision last year. It really does come down to matchups and also dictating terms. And you're going to put your best players on the field. And I don't see a way that Mike McDonald is going to leave Emanwari on the bench in favor of playing Tyrese Knight. in
Well,
most situations.
I mean, okay. Knight is so good at coming downhill and making tackles against the run.
Yes, he's probably better than Emanwari at this moment. Yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
And so there's a lot of value there, and he's not bad at the other things that you ask middle linebackers to do.
No, he's not.
And so I think he's going to get his chance to play. He's going to be the, um, yes, he's going to be that in the base defense, but he's going to also be in there occasionally, in the nickel, and they may find other ways and run a 2-4 system, in the nickel, and give some of their big guys up front a rest, and do it that way. But there's lots of different things that they can do. I just don't think that if you look at having your best 11 guys out there, does that include having Tyrese Knight on the sideline?
Especially if you consider that Tyrese Knight is now going to be in his sophomore season and would be probably one of the 4 or 5 guys on the roster, on the larger roster at large, that I would think has an opportunity to take a leap forward in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was good last year. Now it took him a minute, right? He really didn't get snaps until around week 8 when Ernest Jones came on. I think it was maybe even week 10 where he got that starting job. And he really just took off. I think that there's a huge amount of room there for growth and being really comfortable in the defense, playing fast. I think that he could be a guy. And, as good as Nick Emanwari is as a player and a prospect, he hasn't played a down yet in this system, and we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah. So, just looking, we were talking how some of these guys are undersized, right? You've got Patrick O'Connell's 227, John Ross is 229, Drake Thomas is 228. Like, these aren't big linebackers. These are kind
And
of
that was
undersized
certainly
guys.
the trend in the draft as well. I mean, most of those off the ball linebackers in the draft were in that range as well.
Yeah. Nick Amari is 220. So you're not talking about giving up a lot of bulk to get his speed on there.
Yes. Right.
And so, yeah, I
I'm
mean,
so excited to watch
like I
this
said,
kid.
given the situation where if one of the two inside linebackers goes down, I could see them just playing in the nickel all the time and leaving Enamori in there.
And having him just rotate through that and be alignment versatile to be able to line up wherever that the offense dictates. So not to confuse anybody out there about Nick Emanwari, we are talking about him as a safety, but also he could play some snaps at linebacker. In fact, probably will take snaps there during the season. But let's talk about the safety.
As a safety, he's a strong safety. He's going to be an in the box guy, so he's going to be in there with the linebackers in the box. Even if they've got the base defense in there and they've got all 4 of their linebackers across there, he's still going to be in the box with them. And that's what we're really talking about. So it could be a situation where because that's what he does really well. If you have to because you're missing one of your starters, you run with an extra safety, and and have him in there because he's in the box. So he's basically like a linebacker, but not. You know what I mean? So now safety as a whole, I like this group mainly because they've got your 2 starters, and then Emanwari is not one of them. Emanwari is
right.
This like super prospect, like unicorn, but he's not thought of as a starter at this point. Julian Love is the starting strong safety going into camp, and Kobe Bryant's the starting free safety going into camp, and that's where they were last year when this defense was really good. It was those 2 guys at the safety position. They're both back, and now they've got Emanwari to help out, and his incredible athleticism and speed and everything can only help. So yeah, it's a better group even with just those 3. And then, you go after that, the depth drops off quite a bit, but um, only
I do think, we
typically,
did. Go ahead.
I would say typically, unless you're going to big nickel, you've only got two safeties on the field. So having a third that's ready to come in and play um, is actually reasonable depth.
There are some years where we carry 5 safeties and 5 corners, or some combination of those, 4 safeties, 6 corners, etc. Um, this year it's going to be tough
Mm-hmm.
because I think that the safety room is better than the corner room overall. We'll just see how that shakes out at the end. But
That
Nick
might change
Manwari,
though.
yes, it could. In fact, it could. Yes.
In fact, when we get to corners, we'll talk about that. But
Okay. So,
yeah.
I was going to say DeAnthony Bell was a guy that they picked up in free agency that's got a lot of special teams acumen, but he's
Mm-hmm.
also a guy that you could stick on the field once in a while, kind of a physical player, real good guy in the locker room, a leader in that area. So I expect him to make the roster. And Tyokota and Jarek Reed are going to have their hands full making this roster, I think.
And
And
AJ
we'll see
Finley.
what kind of diversity that the team is looking for with its construction, as far as who makes it, who doesn't, and of course, the play on the field. A kid that's undrafted free agent that the team has currently listed as a corner is Isis Waxter. I've got him as a conversion project. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work, but he's such a good downhill tackler. He's one of the best tackling corners in the draft, but didn't get drafted.
Yep.
And so I'm watching
6'1",
that kid.
205. He's 23. He's out of Villanova. And yeah, in coverage, yeah, that's why he didn't get drafted. But as a tackler, he's a guy that
In
I'm
special
surprised.
teams, he's really good.
Yeah, it's really good at special teams. I'm a little bit surprised that he signed with. I mean, obviously Seattle had an obvious need at corner, and Seattle was being aggressive at corner. But if I was him, I would have looked for a team that runs a lot of cover two, because he's like built to be a cover two. You're not asking him to um, go, cover guys one-on-one down the field. You're asking him
Right.
to cover a zone in the slot and make a bunch of tackles on the outside. He could be great at that. So
I think we run a good portion of that. So that'll be interesting. I mean, the nice thing about him, he's got roster flexibility. I think he can be both a corner and a safety. We'll see how that works out. Okay, let's talk about the corner room. Let's talk about a player we just talked about, possibly them acquiring. They're in conversations with Shaq Griffin, and Seattle
Griffin.
Krill. I'm sorry.
No, it's weird that you look at the reports and they're calling him Shaquille Griffin again, but he was like, it's Quill Griffin. Just leave it at that. And so before he left, I think all the local media had that figured out, but while he was gone,
sorry, I was just going off memory. I don't have his name written down or anything about him written down. So, but the team's considering that. Seattle drafted him in 2027, so he's heading into his 9th season, and potentially thinking about returning to the team, which I think would be a good option. You and I kind of texted about this a little bit. As far as the cost, I think he was in Minnesota last year, played on a $5 million deal. 3.9 of it was guaranteed. Played decent. He's not going to be your number 1, number 2 guy, but he's a great third option, I think, and would be that on this team, 3rd or 4th. I mean, we've got Job. We can talk about what that does to the roster, but I think it would be a way to solidify that room a little bit and add some leadership quality at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was a good Seahawk when he was here. I think his biggest fault was that his name wasn't Richard Sherman, and the fans, okay, Sherman's moving on, and he needs to be the guy that takes over that spot. And he was never going to do that. He's a different kind of player, a different kind of cornerback. And so he got a bad rap that was kind of undeserved, signed a big contract to leave, has bounced around a little bit since leaving, and now possibly coming back. I think it would be great because right now if one of your starters goes down, right? If Witherspoon or Woolen can't play, you're looking at Narromaya Pritchett as being a starter. At that point, and being a guy that's gonna. And from what we saw last year, he needs
He's
to
not
take a
ready.
major step forward before he's ready to take on that kind of role. And he might. That would be awesome if he does. But I'm not. I'll believe it when I see it, right? And
And
so,
he's undersized. I mean, let's just not discount that either.
oh, he's not that small.
Was
Um,
he 5'11", 185, something like that?
yeah, 6'0" and 188. So he's a little thin, but he's got some length to him. And there's hope there. And so we'll see, kind of what that ends up looking like with him and going into year two. But I would feel a lot better having a veteran presence there. I mean, the last couple of years um they've had, some really, really good depth at corner, and they just don't at the moment. And so uh, it would be advantageous to bring in another guy just in a just in case kind of situation. So
Yeah, no, I agree. Um, in free agency, excuse me, the team signed Shamar Jean Charles. Excuse me.
yeah,
And then we've got Demarion Williams, JT Woods, Tyler Hall, Zy Alexander on the roster on the back end. So, I mean, the competition is great for those guys, but nobody's proven. And so that's kind of where you're at with the depth. It's just it's really questionable after the top two. I mean, Josh Jobe came in. He was kind of forced to play some last year. Did an okay job.
he was awful when he first got on the field.
I
Let's not
thought so too,
sugarcoat
but
that.
the team really believed in him and stood behind him when questioned after he played for a couple games. It was like, what's going on with this kid? And
And
the
then
team felt very good about him.
but he turned a corner, and during that stretch, those last 8 games that you and I keep talking about, he was a major contributor as the slot corner. And he went from being awful early on in the season to being pretty damn good down the stretch. So
Yep.
give the kid credit,
Yep.
for developing and getting better and working really hard. Because yeah, I mean, he looked like a guy that maybe wasn't meant for the NFL to being a major contributor on a really good defense. So um, I actually have a lot of faith in him coming into camp as the number 3 guy, as the slot corner. The guy that's he's not going to play on the outside for you, but in the slot, sure. Um, like from what we saw, and not just for a game or in flashes, but every play for like 8 weeks in a row, the kid can play. I hope that he refines that mojo that he had going down the stretch. Because if he does, he's a great player. Just it's a nice piece to have as your
I
third corner.
I think as time goes on and we get ready to do camp battles, position group camp battles, and we will run through all of the different position groups as we get ready for the training camp. And this is going to be one of those position groups that it's wide open after the top two for me. Now, you mentioned Jobe and securing that, but I still think that he's going to need to compete for a job, especially if Griffin comes in. There's going to be a
Yeah,
competition for those third reps, who
yeah,
gets those
abs-
those reps. So
abs- absolutely. Everybody should compete, and he should have to compete, and especially if it's Griffin. You don't put Job in there in pen as the nickel starter on day one, because Griffin's going to have a lot to say about that. But I'm just
and
saying,
Pritchett
like
might too either.
I feel a lot more comfortable with the idea of going into the season with Job as my nickel corner than I would have at any point until right before the end of the season last year, because I was slow to come around. The initial impression was, God, that guy got on the field, and you're like, why the hell is he playing? Oh, that's right, because 85 people have been injured. But then guys got healthy, and Joe was still out there, and he was still out there because he played his way out there. And I like I said, I saw a lot in him last year, and I feel a lot more comfortable with him as the nickel than kind of expected to feel. So
Okay,
the kid just deserves so much credit for how hard he worked to get all that
absolutely.
stuff figured out.
So we've spent the first 30 minutes talking about the side of the ball that was pretty much all figured out,
Mm-hmm.
and is going to kind of carry this team potentially, I think,
It's got to,
for at
yeah,
least the first half of the season. Let's talk about the offense. Now let's talk about the subtractions and the additions. And, when it's all said and done, this team's going to go only as far as Sam Darnold can lead them. So initially, let's have this Darnold conversation, because I think everything kind of pivots away from that move and what he's able to do in this Clint Kubiak offense. So the team jettisoned the old coaching staff on offense and really did an amazing job. Now, I was getting a little nervous as the third week was entering after the coaching search started, and we still hadn't chosen a coach, and then people are starting to get picked off at that point, and the field is narrowing. But I think Seattle always had Clint Kubiak at the front. You and I did as well. We talked about
yeah.
that many times. Out of all the coaches, he was the one that made the most sense for
Mm-hmm.
Mike McDonald and the type of defense he had. But also, when you listen to Mike McDonald about what kind of an offense he wanted to have, Clint Kubiak was always going to be the choice, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
And
I
he
would agree
was,
with that. And um,
and he
they
signed a
want.
fantastic staff too.
Yes, he did. That was one of the things. I think they took their time. They wanted to make sure that they got. They interviewed a bunch of people, but they wanted the right person, and I think they got the right person. I love that he's running an outside zone, the zone stretch scheme. Um, to me, that's, I don't know. It's my favorite running style or running game to
It certainly
scheme
helps
to watch.
the offensive line that we've had.
Yeah. I, I I love that. I love the fact that they went through all of this, but it also, like, that scheme, the way they do stuff. This is um, it's a Gary Kubiak coaching tree, but also Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. This is kind of where those two coaching staffs,
Yeah. Yeah.
those two coaching trees merge. The Venn diagram of them, the spot in the middle is Clint Kubiak, and that's a that's a great place to be. I mean, you've got the Kubiak's running system, which is as good as it gets, and then all of the other stuff that Shanahan does, and you got a guy that's done the job before, so he's experienced in that. He knows what to expect. He's not getting fooled by things. He's um, up to the task and everything. I think last year with Gibbs, he was just in over his head, and it turned out to not be a great situation for anybody.
Ryan Grubb.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I just think that I feel a lot better about the coaching staff that we've got on the offensive side of the ball right now.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, my confidence level is way higher with this regime. And you marry that to the defense we already have. My expectations are maybe outsized compared to a lot of different people, just because I think by the time that the first kickoff comes in September, we're going to be talking about a team that's going to be competing in the playoffs at that
Mhm.
level. Now, if you go to Las Vegas and you look at the numbers, it says we're going to win 7.5 games. Come on. I don't know that too many people really believe that. If you're very honest and you do a due diligence at
Mhm.
actually looking at the team, looking at the roster, looking at expectations, I think it's going to be better than that.
Well,
So
it comes down to, um, your thoughts on Geno Smith and your thoughts on Sam Darnold,
Yeah.
because um, the scheme is going to be significantly better. I'm sorry for Ryan Grubb fans, but the scheme is going to be significantly better this year. But when it comes to quarterback play, do you expect to get more or less out of Donald compared to Geno Smith? And I think
I
that's a
think
fair question.
I do too. And I think for me, the floor is similar output. Now, Geno may or may not generate more explosive plays. Sam Darnold's really good at that. I'm not sure what the offense is going to do to allow that yet. And if we've got the right players to stretch the field to make it all happen, we'll find out. But I think the potential there is good. Sam's got that arm. He can go to all the different locations on the field. Maybe not quite as strong as Geno, but he's also just as accurate. He's just as patient. He's run in this system before. He's spent a year under Kubiak in San Francisco, looking at that. And so
I think that's important to note in all of this is that you have you look at Sam Darnold's career, and he spent some time with the Jets, and he was mediocre. But then he went to
number 3 pick overall in 2018.
Yeah, he went to San Francisco and as a backup, and you could, I mean, Shanahan would not stop raving about everything he saw from Sam Darnold and how he'd be comfortable going in with him as a starter going into as for the whole year, that he's a starter in this league, that he does tremendous things in practice. Like, just the praise was just crazy coming out of Shanahan for his backup quarterback, which was a little weird, if I'm being completely honest. And then the next year he moved on to Minnesota, where he took over because of McCarthy's injury and ran them out there to 14 wins. So
4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, the best year of his career by far.
Yeah.
So that's the question. I mean, and a lot of people really aren't giving Sam Darnold enough credit, I don't think. I think that the evolution is there. Yes, he had the one season. It's funny, the parallels between Geno Smith and Sam Darnold on this thing, but he's looking to resurrect his career here.
Being a quarterback for the Jets is like
a death sentence.
It's yeah.
Yeah. So, really the Seahawks are banking on that. They gave him a contract, $100 million. I mean, it's about 50 million guaranteed money that he's actually going to see potentially in a couple seasons, for that 1 year of real production as a pro. Mm-hmm. But your argument is this player has been evolving for longer than just the Viking season. And it really culminated in that season last year, and it's repeatable. Now, that's the important part. You believe that this is repeatable, and Absolutely. We're going to see the version of Sam Darnold that was last season was better than Geno Smith.
Well, yes, the last season version of Sam Darnold was better than Geno Smith. I will say that Sam Darnold did have a fantastic offensive line last year, and Sam Darnold excels with a clean pocket. He looks like tremendous in a clean pocket. He's better than Geno when the pockets are clean, but Geno is much better when things get really messy. And given Seattle's offensive
and
line,
Kevin O'Connell was fantastic as a play caller and offensive structure. Just really, he fit that really well.
Yeah. So there is the potential for, even if Sam Darnold comes out and plays well, for this to take a step back in terms of quarterback play, simply because even though Geno wasn't great last year, there were a lot of things working against him, mainly the coaching staff and the offensive line. The coaching staff is going to be better for Darnold, but the offensive line may or may not be. And so it's the potential for a step back is there. A potential for a step forward is there too. And I think that we need to recognize that we just don't know. And anyone claiming that they do know is misguided.
I think there is a room for a step forward, but I'm going to pause you just for a second and I'm going to ask you to be realistic. When do you believe that that step forward is possible? Before the first game or after game 8?
Actually, so I'm going to say like after game 8. And the reason is because the step forward is going to come as the offensive line gels. And you've got a lot of really, really young players, including a rookie in Gray Zabel, who's going to be the starting left guard. And
So I was
as
going to
that
talk to
offensive
you.
line comes together, I think that you're going to see more consistent play out of Darnold because he's going to know what to expect. He's going to get comfortable in the pocket. And he's going to start delivering the ball.
That was certainly my next biggest thing to talk about with this offensive roster is just the cohesion being the question mark, in addition to the offensive line, which
It's
I think
really
is
young.
an evolving situation, even with a new offensive left guard that's essentially penned in right now. There's a lot of change. You've got a new regime, new scheme, new blocking, scheme. The whole thing is new language, all of it. Then you jettison the quarterback, Geno Smith, for Darnold. Wide receivers changed out. You've got a Metcalf and Lockett out, Cooper Kupp and Valdez Scantling in. You've got a new offensive guard, like you said. You've got a new potential wide receiving tight end in Arroyo. You've got a potential like third or fourth wide receiver in Torrey Horton that could have an impact. So, and then you've
There's
got
a lot that has to come
you got a
together.
rookie quarterback that's taking, at least local media and local fans by storm in Jalen Milroe. We'll see what kind of impact he has on this season, especially the early part. I think less so. Maybe the latter part, maybe a lot. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So how does that team come together? And you said it. I think it's after week 8, or let's just pick a number, week 6, week 10, where the team is just going to need some time to marinate and gel and understand the language and understand each other and kind of play off that. Now these guys are pro. Darnold's a pro. He's going to be throwing to Cooper Kupp and he's going to be handing the ball off to Ken Walker. And there's at least three offensive linemen that have been starters on this offensive line before. So there is some cohesion. It's just, there's a lot of new integration that is going to have to figure itself out. But I'm with you in that I think the potential for me is higher than the potential drop off. And I probably will be leaning into that, I think, as we get closer to training camp and the season, because I think the potential for improvement is really there, especially considering where the offense left off.
It was so
at
bad
the end of the
last year.
season.
I think that how bad the offense was a year ago is, it seems that people have kind of forgotten that the offense was just an absolute mess.
Yes.
But then you look at it like, oh, well, they lost Geno Smith. He was the quarterback. And then DK Metcalf left and Tyler Lockett left. I'm like, well, let's look at all of that, right? Geno Smith was third in the NFL in interceptions. And was second in the NFL until the very last week when, someone else threw 3. And so like he was a turnover machine a year ago. And then you have, Lockett is a pro's pro in the locker room and such a phenomenal guy and a Seahawk legend, but his production has declined in each of the last 3 years. He's not the guy he once was in terms of being a dominant receiver. Production wise, now locker room and stuff, he's still amazing, but production wise, that stuff's all replaceable. It really comes down to the one loss that they had that was significant was DK Metcalf, and it's like, can you replace that? And I think you can, because you lost one guy, and you've replaced him with like 4. And so are any of them as good as Metcalf? No. But now you've got a lot more depth. Now you can spread the ball around. You can um, be less dependent on one player. And so the teams can't just focus on one player the way they did when it was Metcalf. So
I think that you're
I
discounting Lockett a little bit now. I'm not saying that you're discounting the 3-year drop off. I agree. I think this scheme in particular would have been a friend of Tyler Lockett. And last year, Lockett in a down year, his worst year since his rookie season, had 46 catches. And, so we're still needing to replace 46 catches. Now, that doesn't
but
necessarily need to all come from the wide receiver room either.
so it was the Seahawks threw the football at a higher rate than anyone in the NFL, and he had less production than the year before. So, I mean, to me, that is a significant thing. They
Yeah.
threw the ball all the time, and his production continued to drop. So,
Well, I mean, and Jigba was essentially taking the same sort of snaps, and just is a better wide receiver at this point.
yeah,
I like the upside of the wide receiver room, while not as big and dynamic as it was before. It could be more consistent in this scheme.
it's
Um,
deeper and it's more complete.
yes,
Because last year it was the top 2 guys, JSN and DK Metcalf. Sprinkle in some of the older Tyler Lockett in there,
you
and
weren't getting
then
anything from Noah Fant hardly.
yeah, and then you had Jake Bobo as your number 4 receiver, who's a work hard, block down the field, all those things guy, but doesn't get open
Right.
very often and isn't a productive pass catcher. He does a lot of other great things, and I don't want to discount him because he's a great Seahawk, but he doesn't get open and isn't productive. And so now you go. I mean, they really had 2.5 guys.
Yeah.
And so this year you've got. I'm going to count Cooper Kupp, even though he's a big name, as a half a guy. But with Valdez Scantling out there, and you still got JSN, and you got Cooper Kupp. When he's healthy, is still Cooper Kupp. He's just not healthy very often. But then you add Horton in there, and you add, some other. And so I think that you have a much deeper, more complete room at wide receiver this year than you did last year, even if your number 1 isn't quite as good.
I agree. And then, you know, uh, you add the tight end room, which is
Yeah.
going to be used more this year in the scheme than it has been in many years past. We'll see what Noah Fant can do. I'm interested. I'm one of the few I think that's interested to see if he's going to stay on the roster and how he produces in this offense, because it's set up for him to produce, and we'll find out if he just
Yep.
isn't that guy. AJ
And
Barner can take a step forward.
if he doesn't produce, like
Yeah.
Elijah Arroyo is going to take his snaps and
Yes.
roll with it
Well,
because
that's the exciting thing, because you can align Elijah Arroyo as an X as well. So he's going to
yeah,
take some, he's going to be outside, he's going to be inside, he's going to be in the slot. You can move him around all over the place. He's going to take this deep seam stuff underneath. Like, he's very scheme diverse and probably going to be Sam Darnold's best friend by the end of the season. It's very exciting. And, and Ken Walker last year, for all his injuries and so forth, still caught 46 passes. I think
yes, he
there's an
did.
opportunity, if he stays healthy, where he could have over 1,000 yards rushing, but also have like 70 receptions out of the backfield. I mean, this is a big
Yeah,
change. This is
if he stays
Kubiak.
healthy, though, is a big if.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's,
Kubiak really likes to get the ball to his running backs
I
out
think
of the backfield.
sticking to the tight ends, though, I think the development of AJ Barner last season, for some people, went unnoticed because he came in like, okay, he's the good blocking tight end, the best blocking tight end in that draft and whatever. He was a complete player by the end of the season. Very good, running routes and catching balls, and is very much like a guy that you can have on the field for every play. Fant is a pass catcher, and it goes and gets open and does those kind of things, but he doesn't offer much blocking. Elijah Arroyo is very similar. He is a guy that is a great pass catcher and will get open and make big plays, but he actually offers you a little bit more than Fant as a blocker, with a lot more upside as a blocker. He just needs some coaching and some opportunity. And
Hmm.
so I think between Barner and Arroyo, you've drafted two really nice looking tight ends the last two seasons.
I
Uh,
agree.
and and so Fant's going to be there. He's the name guy. He's going to have an opportunity, and I think he's going to last on the roster because they don't need the cap space at this point. They just have
Seattle, without any move for Noah Fant, has essentially $26 million of usable cap space.
yeah
They've got 33 million overall, I think,
yeah, but
without
they've got
signing their rookies yet.
yeah, you got to keep the rookies in mind. You got to have, and you have to have a pool of, because guys are going to end up on the practice squad. Guys are going to end up on an IR and need to be replaced on the roster, and those things count. So you got to. There's like a certain amount that you know kind of have to keep in reserve, um, but they don't need the money from Noah Fant's contract anymore. So
Right.
he's a guy that I expect him to be on the roster. Um, I kind of expect him to be on the roster for one more season though, because if Arroyo does
He could
anything,
be a trade deadline guy.
he could be actually, because if Arroyo does anything, you're gonna be looking at it going, wait, why are we playing the older, more expensive player instead of the younger, cheaper player with more upside?
Right.
Let's get
So,
Arroyo out there.
yeah. So I'm really, we didn't really talk about the running back room, and the team's going to run the ball this year and they're going to be good at it. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the thing. It's like, and it's hard for me to say that when we finished the season ranked, I think 28th overall in running the ball. If we're not a
That high?
top 15, I know if we're not a top 15 rushing team this year, I will be shocked. If we're top 10, I kind of expect that in
20,
that range.
28th seems high. Are you sure it wasn't like 30 or 31?
Okay,
Um,
I'm being generous.
and I'm not trying to be like contrarian. The Seahawks sucked at
I
running the
don't
ball.
have that stat in front of me. I'm just going off memory.
And some of that is the scheme, the coaching staff, the play calling. Um, and a lot of it's the offensive line that just couldn't get the job done
Mm-hmm.
up the middle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you're looking now at, Ken Walker is in a position to just explode this year. That one cut and go system with his speed is going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Kenny
just
Mack,
watching some highlights of him today, just so that I could refresh my memory on how dynamic he really is.
yeah,
And it's true. Like he gets the ball in space and he's hard to bring down. And
yeah.
is explosive and can be a home run threat
hmm
for you.
And
So he's
Kenny McIntosh is interesting in this scheme. Look at Zach Charbonnet, like his power, his ability to be
yeah.
decisive, cut up, and not get tackled. When by the first person that hits him, is going to be great in this scheme. His
And
ability to always fall forward. It's going to be
if you
awesome.
love Zach Charbonnet in this system, you're gonna love Damian Martinez in this system.
Yeah, 20,
It's
21-year-old rookie is the guy. He's Zach Charbonnet with more speed.
and more power. He just is. Like I like
Um,
Charbonnet. Don't get me wrong. Like Charbonnet runs hard. I really like Charbonnet. Martinez is like his clone, like just a little bigger, a little faster, a little stronger. And we'll see, like if that translates onto the field. But I like that room a lot. Like George
yeah, I do
Holani's on
too.
there as well, but he's going to be a practice squad guy. Let's be honest, unless there's an injury.
I don't
Um,
know. Last year there was a lot of talk that he was going to make the team and Kenny McIntosh was going to get sent to the practice squad, and then a lot of people were surprised when it
yeah,
was Holani that was cut and sent to the practice squad, and so he's kind of in there. I think the team likes him. They like what he does in special teams. Um, he was really good in college, and there was just an injury that caused him to end up going undrafted because it looked really bad. And Now he's got a chance to come back. He's had a whole nother year. Let's not count Halani out, because before his injury, he looked like he's going to be like a second or third round pick.
Maybe we'll have to add that to the position group camp battles to watch.
Actually, yes. These 5 guys, and there's Wright, who's in there too.
Arcadia,
right? And but the 5 guys that with Walker, McIntosh, Martinez, Halani, and Charbonnet, there is a lot to like with those 5 guys.
So I'm going to add a player to talk about while we're talking about running backs. Jalen Milroe.
Yeah.
How can you not talk about Jalen Milroe and the athletic ability and his running ability, which honestly, if he was drafted as a running back in this draft, probably would have gone second, or third. He's just that dynamic. There's one player I watched.
He would have gone before he went as a quarterback.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
At 6'3" or 6'4", 222. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's amazing. So if you watch Jalen Milroe at all and you kind of do a cut up of just his running, his ability to get to the edge and then cut up field is second to none. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Lamar Jackson is special, but Lamar Jackson's a kind of a glider. Jalen Milroe is fantastic. I mean, just and decisive, and he just makes guys miss. Like, guys just can't
up angles.
Yeah,
like, when he gets to the edge, and it's all about like the angle that the linebackers are taking as they
you think he's going to get cut off, and he just
just doesn't. Yeah, he eats up angles. Like, guys just, and you can see it all season long. And you'd think that with the tape and coaching and whatever, that guys would eventually adapt and they'd get a feel for his speed, and they'd take better angles. And they just didn't. You go watch in the college football playoff, and you see him just running away from linebackers that thought they had him. They thought they had him cut off, and he just gets to that edge before he can.
So let's talk about Jalen Milroe the way that the team wants to talk about him. Quarterback first. We're training him to be a quarterback. He's going to be a quarterback. He's not just going to be an athlete. We're not just going to run plays for him as a running back, essentially. What do you think of that? What do you think? You've got this guy that's on your bench. How do you get him on the field, and how do you use his dynamic ability to change the game in his first season?
I think that you see him as a quarterback, you're going to develop him as a quarterback, but he needs a lot of development as a quarterback. You can still use him while he's developing because of his athleticism, because of his dynamic ability. You can bring him in and run the Wildcat
or run past option stuff.
Yeah, an RPO thing. Bring him in on the goal line and really put a lot of pressure on defenses to keep all of their assignments perfect. Because
make them cover the pass and the run.
Yeah, because it's not just we're coming in with this, so we know they're not going to throw it. Let's get everyone up at the line of scrimmage. No,
right? They're not going to load the box on that guy because they can't. He can still throw. We hear all this stuff in the press, and everyone's talking about how Milroe is just shitty at throwing the ball, and he's not.
He was a 65% completion guy. Now he has some bad mechanics.
Yes,
some bad mechanics. His footwork, his lower half it's not good. It's really not good. There's a lot of work.
It's not bad when he sets his feet. Like when he gears up and throws his long ball, that long ball is amazing.
Yeah, because the long ball forces him to set his feet in order to get enough oomph on it to get it down the field. When he sets his feet, he's a good thrower. He just doesn't set his feet, and he needs to. He needs to learn how to do that on every single throw. And I think that coaching will get him there. I think that now that he's not expected to be the starter and be making plays throughout every game, and
he can just focus on the fundamentals.
He could just focus on himself. I think they can get him there, and
So as the season
Honestly,
goes
there's a lot
on,
to like.
you I think that he gets more installations, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll find out. I mean, it's exciting because nobody knows, right?
Yep.
And I man, talk about a dynamic add to a team where you've already got everything that's set. You don't need him, but you add him to the potential. And this offense kind of looks pretty special. But let's talk about the offensive line real quick before we get out of here. We know
Yep.
we added Gray Zabel. We needed to add that. The alignment in the draft was great. Need
Perfect.
versus
Yep.
availability and skill set. He was there. We took him. Smart move.
He's going to be your
Um,
left guard. He's going to be a major upgrade this
yes.
year. Um, and just sit back and enjoy it. Watch it.
But
It'll be
was
fun.
but was it enough?
I don't know. I think some of it will come. Oluwatimi started the last half of the year. He wasn't significantly worse um, than Uh, the team really likes Jalen Sundle, and I wouldn't be. I would love to watch to see if he can beat out Oluwatimi during camp. Um,
He was the roommate of Gray Zabel in college,
I was going
by
to
the way.
say college teammate, college roommate. Those guys know each other. That's going to be fun because that's one of
Yeah.
those things. There's a level of trust. There's a level of communication. These guys know each other really well, so I think that's a possibility. Um, I think both tackles are good to go this year. Last year, there's a lot of question on Abe Lucas and if he was going to be healthy and actually get a chance to play and whatever. And it
Yeah, I haven't heard any news like on okay, he needed more cleanup on his knee or
he
anything.
He hasn't
Just
needed
been
more
good to
cleanup.
go.
He's just been good to go. He's been working out as if it was a normal off season. There's no recovery. There's none of
I
there's
watched
no
him, in a tape throwing tires and stuff.
yeah.
You know how Walter Jones used to push Escalades,
Uh-huh.
and Abe Lucas is pushing tires around and flipping tires over and over and driving them down the field.
Yeah.
Um, so that's good stuff, man. That's
Yeah.
that
So
core strength that you just can't get any other way.
yep.
Um,
He's a guy that there's a if you're looking for improvement off the offensive line, just look at what a healthy Abe Lucas can do. Because he wasn't great last year. Yeah, he got back and he got on the field, but you could tell he was struggling at times. The strength that he had as a rookie just wasn't there yet.
so as
There were
we talk
flashes of
about
it, but not really.
as we talk about like Abe Lucas and we talk about Charles Cross and we talk about like the Christian Haynes, Satoa Lamea, Anthony Bradford battle pending, and you can even throw Bryce Cable, do the guy that we picked up in the
Mhm.
later round, with Gray Zabel and Oluwatimi or Sundell. Talk to me about all of that and the cohesion there that's potentially possible, and um, and talk to me about the scheme. Like the scheme last year really didn't put these players individually in the best
No.
position to be successful. And this scheme is the complete opposite. Plus, you've got coaches like Benton and Dennison there, to coach this line that are pros, like seasoned pros. They know how to do it. You're not going to get any bullshit from these guys. It's all going to be like, this is how we do it. This is how we run it. Everyone's going to know exactly what they should expect. And it uses the movement skills and athleticism. I think that is built into the guys we already have.
Yeah. So as um in the terms of the running scheme, the guys that are here are much better suited for the current scheme than the old one. The old one being inside zone. Yes, there's the zone aspects to it, but there's a lot of blocking forward. Outside zone is a lot of blocking wide, getting people to move laterally. Then all you need is one seal block, and there's a big lane for a running back to cut back through. But what you need to do that is you need guys with agility, guys that can move laterally, with speed and strength. And um, Christian Haynes can do that. Like that's his profile. Oluwatimi can do that. Like that's his profile. Now, as pass blockers, it's not any different. it's the same situation. And Oluwatimi is still going to get pushed into the backfield um, as a pass blocker. But as a run blocker, this is a much better system that fits his talents than what they ran last year.
The nice thing about Gray Zabel is that he's equally adept at both run blocking and pass blocking.
He's an exceptional prospect.
We already know that Charles Cross is a pretty decent pass blocker. We already know Abe Lucas is a pretty decent pass blocker. So really, we're just focused on center and the battle between Haynes, Lumea, and Bradford to kind of settle that right guard spot. What do you expect is the outcome?
I would be surprised if Bradford's on the roster. He might not even make it through the entirety of training camp.
I think you're wrong. I'll challenge you on that. I think you're wrong. I think that he's so cheap. And I think that the team values him a lot more than you just said out loud.
Well, okay. So the things that you got to be able to do to survive in this scheme, because we know he can't pass block. He's terrible. But as a run blocker, you've got to have that lateral agility and you've got to be able to got to have movement skills, right? His short shuttle was in the 40th percentile. His arm length was in the 33rd percentile. His 3-cone was in the 45th percentile.
But even though those physical limitations are true, he graded out pretty decent in college as a wide zone blocker.
It's college. I don't care. And the
only
quote unquote grade is PFF. And go look at their history. And according to their grades, the best quarterback in the draft every year doesn't get drafted. Like they have not figured college football out, so I don't care. I just know that what I've seen since he turned pro is a guy who can't pass block to save his life. He's got a lot of power pushing straight forward, but does not have the ability to go laterally. He's a terrible fit for the scheme. All the things we talked about guys like the scheme being better for guys like Oluwatimi and Haynes and Lumea and the two tackles and whatever. The opposite is true for Bradford. This scheme is going to highlight everything Bradford can't do.
Is there a possibility that a late round guard prospect or played tackle all through college, Bryce Cabledew, is a guy that athletically profiles really nicely into this scheme? Are we discounting his potential?
I don't think we're discounting his potential, more as we are looking at where he was drafted and the guys above him and think that it's going to take time for him to acclimate to the NFL and that he's probably not going to be a week 1 starter, no matter how quickly he makes the move. But that I don't want to discount his future, because I think he can develop into being that right guard. On the other side of the center, that would work really well for this team. Or maybe they move him to center and he starts to push Oluwatimi and Sundal. Like, guy's got a lot of athletic profile that's pretty for this scheme. So I don't want to discount him. I just think that he's got to overtake a lot of guys in order to get up to where he actually gets on the field. And I don't know if that's going to happen by week 1.
So I'm fairly hopeful that this offensive line just out of the gate is better than the offensive line was last year, even though we've got a couple of guys that are going to come in and play that started last year that had sometimes a rough time at it. But I so much believe in the coaching staff, the offensive line coach, and in Benton, the assistant in Dennison, and those guys and the experience that they bring in. I don't think they're going to allow this group to fail. And so I have expectations that this thing's going to smooth out in due time. And that will be the question. How quickly can this offensive line come together and be at least league average to get to where we're converting third down opportunities and we're scoring in the red zone and we're keeping up with our defense?
If the offensive line is league average, and like 16th in the league overall, the Seahawks are a force because that's what's holding this team back. The defense is legit. We saw that for 9 straight weeks to end this season. The defense is legit. The offense could be, if the offensive line isn't like a major just talent suck where it just drags the whole team down. And if their league
We already
average,
know that it's not going to be that. We already
well, that's what it was
know that
last
if you
year.
start, well, check this out. We already know that if you start Charles Cross and you start Gray Zabel at left guard and you start Oluwatimi at center and you start Christian Haynes or even Bradford or Lamea at right guard and you have a healthy Abe Lucas at right tackle, this line is going to be better when you put it into this scheme with this coaching staff. Even
Sure.
if
I mean,
the baseline is, Satoa Lamea is your right guard and Olutimi they play just as well as they did last year, no better, no worse. And you add Zabel to this line is better.
yeah. I'm just saying, like, if they're 25th, if they improve from 30th to 25th, they could still hold this team back. But if they improve from 30th to 16th, all of a sudden the Seahawks are a scary team with that defense.
What do you expect?
I think that you're going to see them start slow. With the offensive line, the running game, some of those things are going to start slow. The defense is going to keep them in games, and we'll see what they can do down the stretch and whether they can, win some close, low scoring games to start the year. And I think the offensive line should improve steadily throughout the year. And if they get, to the end of the year, these guys are playing like they can, that this offense is going to start clicking. It's going to be good. I think it will.
Yeah, interesting. I'm a little bit more hopeful in that I think Sam Darnold's the perfect quarterback for this scheme and this coaching staff. I think the running back room is amazing. I think you add the wild card of Jalen Milroe into that, it's supercharged. You get Cooper Kupp, we only know, he's probably going to play 12 to 13 games, and I'll take that. But you've got to have somebody that's going to be able to come in and fill in. And I think Torrey Horton kind of does that for you. You're looking for Jake Bobo to step up, maybe Derek Young. I don't know. We haven't seen anything yet. Maybe one of those undrafted guys or guys, practice squad level guys, steps up. The wild card there is, I think you turn to the tight end room and you have Arroyo that can also play some wide receiver type snaps for you, kind of that role. And so that's an addition. And I think the tight end group gets used and utilized better with Kubiak than it has been in many years. And so I think overall the position group, the playmaker position groups are better overall, even without DK Metcalf in the equation. And then the offensive line is going to be, I think it's going to be better. Like, I think the upside, I think starting slow is definitely a possibility, but also I think these guys are going to just take to it. This zone blocking, this outside zone blocking things. And some of these guys have done this before in college and some in the pros. And it's just going to kind of click. I think it might be a little slow to kind of get everybody on the same page, but I think by game 4, you're going to see it start to emerge for you. And if they can eke out a few wins early just by, creating turnovers and beating them on the defensive side and getting some playmakers to make, big plays after the catch, all that kind of stuff. We could win games. Like I think, looking at the schedule, we haven't seen that, but I've seen the teams that we're going to play. I mean, I could definitely see 12 wins in this thing, and everything's going to have to come together, but I think the potential's there. So
Potential's there. I think that's asking for a lot of.
I know it's asking for a lot, but darn it.
It's the same as last year where it's like, if this goes well, and this goes well, and this goes well, and this, and
right.
It's not going to come up heads every single time.
I think there's a number of teams in the 10 range, area from last year that say this very same thing every year. It's like, well, we've done this on paper. We've done this. We've made these changes. Net, we think we're better, but it all needs to come together. That's certainly true for this team and this roster, but there's just something about Mike Macdonald as a coach and who he's hired and the kind of mentality I think they're trying to build here, and the draft pick with Gray Zabel and Nika Manwari on the defensive side. There's something here that I think is going to be pretty special as the season unfolds.
It's going to be fun. It really is.
All right. So next show, I think we're going to talk about a few of the roster holes, focus on those.
Yeah. We kind of talked about a couple of them. We talked about a couple of them today, but we're going to really get into what can they still do about it? Who's out there? Who's available? What are the different moves that they can make in order to help?
Absolutely. And I've got my free agent lists and so forth, but I really haven't taken a look at potential trades or camp casualties that are out there. And I think I'm going to try to bring in some of that information too, because, it's easy to focus on free agents that are available today, but a lot can happen between now and the trade deadline too, to improve this roster if needed. So, let's get out of here, Keith. Find us on Blue Sky for Keith Myers, at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, leave us some comments, and we enjoy all the great comments. Most of those are positive. There's some that are probably true, but are a little bit harder on us. We'll take those
I don't
too.
care.
We'll
take anything. If you think we've got this all screwed up, let us know. We're open to those comments. Honestly, it's all good. We appreciate every one of you, whether you agree with us or not.
Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you next time. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.